Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedom and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country. In the courtrooms of America, Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedom.
A recent poll shows that a majority of Americans support marriage as the union of one man and one woman. Hi, I'm Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel. Joining me is Matt Barber, vice president of Liberty Counsel Action. Matt, you know, we had this election. We've had, before this November election of 2012, every time that marriage was put on the ballot for people to vote, it always overwhelmingly passed in favor of marriage as a union of one man and one woman. You have 31, 32 states now that have passed marriage amendments. November 2012 was the very first time that 4 marriage amendments didn't pass. One of those in Minnesota was to actually put it on the ballot to affirm marriage as the union of one man, one woman. 3 were actually to overturn what the legislature had done previously. None of those 4 passed. Now, some pundits in the Republican Party say that, well, we ought to back off this issue and move away. And I think that that's completely wrong for a lot of reasons. The poll, and I don't base my opinion on a poll, but this poll recently came out by the National Organization for Marriage that continues to show that people, as a majority, support marriage as the union of one man and one woman.
Yes, 60% of voters, in fact, believe that marriage is as marriage is and has always been between a man and a woman, and do not want to see marriage redefined. Now, we need to be clear here that Maryland, Maine, Washington State, and Minnesota are typically very liberal states. So although this is definitely a victory for those who are pushing counterfeit marriage, we cannot deny that reality. These are very liberal states, so they're what you might call the low-hanging fruit, in that you might expect, if any states were going to go for counterfeit marriage, that it would be liberal states such as these 4. The reality is that the battle continues on whether or not we as a nation are going to let radical postmodern progressives take and deconstruct the institution of marriage and redefine it radically into oblivion, which is what they're trying to do. Water it down to the point where if marriage is anything and everything, Matt, then marriage, of course, is really nothing at all. It has no real significance.
Well, on our website, Liberty Counsel Action website at lcaction.org, we reposted an article that I wrote earlier in the year of 2012 during the Republican primary. And at that point in time, I said, if you have a moderate Republican candidate for president, you will have lower voter turnout. And that's what was happening in the polls. Every state, for example, that Mitt Romney was winning, for example, Florida, although he won because he carpet bombed everybody and did negative ads. He had no ground game and lower voter turnout. If you had a candidate that had social values, you had higher voter turnout. If you had Romney, you had lower voter turnout. What ultimately happened in the general election is you had lower voter turnout. And look at Maryland, for example. 36.6% voted for Romney, but 48.1% voted for marriage as a union of one man and one woman. Minnesota, 45% voted for Romney, 47.4% voted for marriage. In Washington, 41.8% voted for Romney, 46.8% voted for marriage. Each one of those states, more people voted for marriage than Romney. They had a contradictory vote. They voted for marriage and they voted for Barack Obama in greater measure. Those were contradictory votes. Why? Because Romney was a one-note candidate. Jobs in the economy. You'd ask him a question on what's he going to do about immigration. Jobs in the economy. Benghazi. Jobs in the economy. How did he all of a sudden switch it back to jobs in the economy when we're talking about foreign affairs? Yeah. He could not speak about life or marriage, and so he didn't campaign in those states speaking about those issues and associating himself with marriage. Had he done so, his numbers would have gone up, and I bet the marriage polls would have gone up. But Obama goes into those states, and he reaches out to the liberal vote, campaigning against the definition of marriage as one man and one woman, and he ultimately wins. We need people who can espouse our core values of life and marriage, of limited government, of strong national defense. Every time we get these mealy candidates like Romney or McCain, we have this problem, and then Republican pundits come up and say, oh, we need to change our position on marriage and abortion. This election was not about marriage and abortion. It was a one-note message that Romney was pushing, and that was jobs in the economy.
You know, as an individual, I came out at the very end. I have long been, and I know you have too, Matt, been a critic of Mitt Romney's liberal policies to moderate policies on social issues particularly. Ultimately, when he won the day in the primary, I came out and supported him individually because I believed that he, by far, was closer to values, voters, principles than was Barack Obama, and clearly that was the case. But I don't understand the Republican Party. Of course, we're nonpartisan at Liberty Counsel, but it's interesting to me that for 3 election cycles running, presidential election cycles, they gave us Bob Dole, who was a moderate Republican, Rhino Republican. They gave us John McCain, a moderate Rhino Republican, Mitt Romney, a moderate Rhino Republican. All 3 got trounced. Romney very close ultimately in the Electoral College, but still got beat. And yet I hear the pundits on Fox News and elsewhere coming out today saying the problem is those social issues, those social voters. We need to be more mealy-mouthed, more moderate, closer to Democrats.
I'm fed up with people on Fox News. Whether it's Sean Hannity or Bill O'Reilly, they think they just know everything, and yet they're the ones who are pushing Romney as a candidate. Sean Hannity was pushing Romney as a candidate. That was his man that he had. And so now what we do, we need to not change our values. We need to understand how to message those values. And when we have candidates that either are not comfortable with those values, as Romney was, as McCain was, they're not going to be able to message our values. If you start talking about marriage and why it's important, there's a way to be able to resonate with the populace and explain why marriage is important, why deconstructing marriage through same-sex marriage will ultimately hurt society. You know, what we ultimately say by this policy of same-sex marriage as a policy matter that boys don't need dads, that moms and dads are completely, absolutely irrelevant, inconsequential to the well-being of boys and girls as they're being raised. And common sense tells you otherwise. And in fact, if you go to the violent offender section of any jail, go to the men's section and ask them one question. Where was your dad when you were growing up? Well, my dad wasn't here. He wasn't around. Well, there's a correlation between that. We all know the correlation of fatherlessness with young boys. We know the impact that it has on average, not every time. What we also need to do is we just need to affirm this basic foundational principle. We can't run from it. We need to articulate it, and we need candidates that can articulate it.
Yeah, you know, the reality is, as you mentioned, Matt, our common sense tells us, our experience tells us that children do better with a mom and a dad. But there's not a large body of research on the topic, but there is a growing body of research and a couple of the most comprehensive studies that are out there. Although the left has tried to shoot them down, they have been unsuccessful in doing so. These are objective studies that were done by Walter Shum at Kansas State University and Mark Regnerus at the University of Texas. A survey of thousands of individuals arrived at the reality. This study just reaffirmed what we already know to be the case, that not only do children do better with mom and dad, that children do far worse when raised in a dysfunctional disordered sexual environment, a homosexual environment, and that kind of household. We know this to be the case. Reality dictates it, but now there's a growing body of research to support that reality.
Well, not only does it remove one gender permanently from that child's life, but also skews the view of the absent gender, unlike single parenting. Single parenting doesn't permanently remove one gender. There's always the possibility of having the opposite gender join that relationship, but same-sex marriage permanently removes one gender, and it skews the view of the opposite sex because of the antipathy or the non-connection with that opposite sex. So it removes it and skews it, and that's why it has a huge impact on children. Certainly, marriage as the union of one man and one woman is biblical. It is moral. It is historical. It is the very foundation of who societies are. And to run from it or deconstruct it is absolutely absurd. This poll certainly shows that most people still retain common sense, despite some of the pundits that say that we ought to abandon this issue. We need to not just our views based upon popularity polls. Ronald Reagan didn't put his finger up in the air and decide what his policies were going to be based upon a popularity poll that Pew or some other research institution came out. We need to articulate our values, and when we clearly articulate them, then that will resonate with the majority of people. Go to Liberty Counsel's website, lc.org. You can ask for my book, Same-Sex Marriage, Putting Every Household at Risk. Also, we have Only One Mommy, written by Rena Linda Voltson. Go to the lc.org website, sign up for the Liberty Alert, and support Liberty Counsel at this time of year.
You have been listening to Faith and Freedom with Liberty Counsel. We hope that we have motivated you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedom. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email updates. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.